Talking on all political subjects and taking on all callers, this is Matt Flynn Direct with your host, Matt Flynn.
Welcome to Matt Flynn Direct, coming to you live statewide on Civic Media. The lines are open, 844-967-2789. No subject is off limits. All points of view are welcome. And remember, you're not woke if you don't know history. You're not woke unless and until you know history. You're getting right to the front lines of history in the making. History in the making. And here is what's going on with Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. This is really unbelievable. Trump just came out. Donald Trump, crooked Donald Trump, lying Donald Trump, came out. He's afraid of Nikki Haley. He knows he won in Iowa. He knows he won in New Hampshire. But she's stubborn, and she's stubbornly hanging on. New Hampshire, she got about 43% of the vote. He got about 11 points more, about 54. Almost half the electorate voted for her or somebody else. Believe it or not, DeSantis got a few votes. Other people got a few votes in the Republican primary. I'm not talking about overall. He's an incumbent in a sense. He lost last time, even though he lied about it. But in a sense, he's the closest you have to an incumbent on the Republican side. And he, something like 40 some odd percent of the people in his own party don't want him. In his own party don't want him. Well, he can't leave it alone. He can't shut up. He can't say, okay, we're moving on. No. He has spent a lot of time attacking her. And she, as a result, the day after that primary, raised over $1 million. Raised $1 million. And most of the contributions, the vast majority, were under $200. She had a couple 100,000 contributions overall. Here's what he has said about her. He has said that anybody that contributes to her from now on is shut out from him and the MAGA movement. Here's the direct quotation. He put this on Truth Social media network. Quote, Nikki Birdbrain Haley is very bad for the Republican Party and our country. Her false statements, derogatory comments, and humiliating public loss is demeaning. He used the word is instead of are, is demeaning to true American patriots. Her anger should be aimed at her third-rate political consultants. I knew Nikki well. She was average at best, not the one to take on world leaders, and she never did. Anybody who makes a contribution to Birdbrain from this moment forth will be permanently barred from the MAGA movement, the MAGA camp. She gets $1 million in 24 hours, almost all donations under 200. This is not the big boys. This is not the big donors. And Trump, frankly, is terrified. Why is he terrified? Well, he has something like 2 delegates. She has 17. He needs over 1,200 to get it. And she's hanging around. And unlike him, she's not old. She will be around. And here, I see you on the line, so I'm going to get to you right now. But this is truly unbelievable. This is truly unbelievable. I want to say again what he said about her, what he called her right from the podium after he'd won. Quote, Nikki, some very dishonest people you'll have to fight. Have to fight some very dishonest people. Nikki's not going to win, but if she did, she'd be under investigation in 15 minutes. And I would tell you 5 reasons why already. Not big reasons, little stuff she doesn't want to talk about, but she will be under investigation within minutes. And so would Ron have been, but he decided to get out. These people, this guy, this whole movement is disgusting. And then he made fun of her dress. He made fun of her dress. This guy is a former president running for president. He's threatening her donors. He's threatening her with investigation, lying about the reason for it. She is not under investigation. We're going to the lines. Take you in order. Do not hang up. Cindy of Appleton, my friend, you're first. What's on your mind today, Cindy?
Well, I'm a little concerned about Nikki Haley because I'm afraid if she were to win the nomination, we would have the same kind of situation where people who don't want to vote for Biden would vote for Nikki Haley. And we're going to end up with somebody that's just as crazy as Trump as far as I'm concerned. So I'm really concerned about that. I almost think we'd rather have Trump on the ticket because I think people aren't going to vote for him like they did the last time. And if we can get people to vote for Biden, we may be able to pull off another Biden win. Although I'm not a Biden supporter myself, he's too old, but he's better than Trump or Haley.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, let me put your mind at ease. Let me put it at ease. First of all, I'm a strong Biden guy. I've known him a long time. Very, very smart, very honest, very self-deprecating. Puts the interests of the country above anything and above his own interest. Very, very solid guy. When you say he's old, right now he's 81. Okay, I mean, that's old, but in what respect? Trump will be 78 in July. Trump is 3.5 years younger than him. So I think that Trump is entirely in command, and his wisdom and experience are important. People in their 30s or 40s and 50s are great. They don't have the wisdom and experience of Joe Biden. Secondly, and this is important, I don't think Nikki Haley's going to win. The reason I don't think she's going to win is because the Trump forces have seized control of the nominating process in most of the states, most of the states that are going to be voting in March. For instance, California has 160 some odd Republican delegates, and it's a winner take all. If you win by one vote, you get them all, 160 delegates. And right now, Trump's ahead of her in the polls by 66% to whatever the remainder is. So the truth of the matter is these other states don't have the favorable circumstance that New Hampshire does. The reason that I like, there was independents and more moderate. The reason I like to see Nikki Haley stay in is because it puts a lot of pressure on Trump. He continues to attack and insult her. And that is increasingly turning off moderate Republicans, independents, and any Democrat who would even think of voting on the Republican side. The second thing is this, and this is counter to a lot of what you have read. I don't think Nikki Haley has a prayer in hell of beating Joe Biden if she were the nominee. Donald Trump had incumbency before, so at least he supposedly knows his way around, although he doesn't. He's a slave to Putin. But Nikki Haley, she was an ambassador to the United Nations. The last time a cabinet member was elected to the presidency was Herbert Hoover. He was Secretary of the Interior when he ran for president in 1928. Yes, she was governor of South Carolina. I get it. South Carolina is a smaller state than Wisconsin. They have 8 congressmen. We have 9. So you're the governor of South Carolina, and then you're Trump's cabinet member, ambassador to the United Nations. You didn't do anything. She has nothing. All she does is she gets up there and she says, well, I think you should take a cognitive test. I think, senior moments. Okay, how about wisdom and experience? Haley, what are you going to do if the Ruskies go into Latvia? What are you going to do if the Chinese duplicate the 1995 Taiwan Strait crisis and start launching missiles into the water around Taiwan? How far are you going to go? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do in the Middle East? Where now we're in discussions with Iraq to potentially withdraw, which will result in ISIS taking over in Iraq, and it'll be like Afghanistan. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with the Houthis? You can't just continue to go on and say, the fellas are a little over the hill, vote for me. You won't take on Trump on any issue. You don't care. You say agree with him. We don't want you. So relax, Cindy. She's not going to be the nominee. Biden wants Trump because he'll beat Trump like a drum, like he did before. But even if for some reason she slipped in, Trump's have a heart attack, he gets prison time on one of these charges. The Republicans do not have anybody of any stature. Going back to the lines, John of Boaz, my friend. Thanks for calling. What's your mind today, John?
Hi, Captain. I'm the second son of a sailor. My dad survived the worst typhoon in Navy history, except for the Indianapolis, beat him in the loss of lives.
Wow.
But I would like to back up into the history of Trump's last. When he was in there the first time, we had an issue with Iran, and his national security advisor said, what would happen if we ever got into a real crisis with Trump as president? In writing, that's in his book. He wrote about working for Trump. Trump, all he wants is ass kissers. If you are an ass kisser, you're not going to work for him.
Right.
Now, that's not right ethics.
Right. Well, not only that, he's on the take. He's taken money from Russia. They funded him for more than 20 years. That's why he's going to betray Ukraine. That's why they're doing it right now. He's taking money from Saudi Arabia. And that's why he defended them when those Saudi Arabian cadets murdered our sailors with guns in a Navy training class in Florida in December of 2018. And he defended the Crown Prince, Chainsaw Charlie, because he got money from him. And now he's defending China against Taiwan because he got any money from Chinese banks for, quote, services rendered, end quote, without any definition. And these are banks that have avoided our sanctions on North Korea. The guy's on the take. Okay, coming up, and I see you guys on the line. I will take you in order. Do not hang up. Do not hang up. Coming up, some unbelievable developments in the E. Jean Carroll case. But first, I'm going to get to the lines. Coming up.
You can run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. Go tell that long-tongued liar. Go and tell that midnight rider. Tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter. Tell him that God's gonna cut you down. Tell him that God's gonna cut you down. Tell him that God's gonna cut you down.
Keeping you informed, entertained.
Contest supports the Kinship Food Center.
Return to sender. Return to sender.
Welcome back to Matt Flynn Direct. Our lines are open, 844-967-2789. I'm going to take you in order. Do not hang up. Stephen at Green Bay, my friend. You're first. What's your mind today, Stephen?
This Trump guy, oh my. Every day comes out to be a little more nauseating if you read what he's got to say. But here's what I got to say about the issue when it comes to Trump. First of all, I've tuned this guy out a long time ago. He doesn't really bother me much anymore. I know that a lot of what he does is smoke and mirrors, and he just wants to get a reaction out of people. But one thing I did want to raise to you, I found pretty funny, is I got a text from Nikki Haley's campaign, and in that text message, it was a picture of the message that Trump put on Truth Social that you read off on air here. And the caption above that was, "So, anyone want to donate?" And I laughed so hard at the comedy of that. It was almost too much to bear. I was almost crying in my car. Nikki's definitely having some fun with it, as I think a lot of other people are. I could say a lot about Trump, but again, I'm going to save my oxygen for something more important.
Yeah, excellent comment. That's very funny that you got, because you wouldn't be somebody who'd normally, I suppose, be on a Republican list, but the fact that she just repeats what he said and then say, anybody want to donate, I think that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. And he's scared. He's terrified, not because he hasn't beaten her in a few primaries and he doesn't have the rest of it locked up with his people, but the more she's in the race, he can't control himself. He keeps attacking her in ways that disgust independents and moderate Republicans, disgust them. And the longer she stays in, and the more often he does that, the worse it is going to be for him. Going back to the lines in order, don't hang up. We're going to know now to Karina of Milwaukee. What's in your mind, Karina?
Hello, Matt. You know what? You're absolutely right. He is just this is like classical bully picture. You know, the overgrown, overweight, very slow kid in class making some other kids fooling, and the rest of them are standing behind him and cackling. But you know what? The more he does this, I think that the more people should be asking themselves, who wants to be MAGA or whatever. The MAGA, it's all made up. It's not real. I mean, you can call yourself whatever you want, but there is no such a thing. There is either one or the other. One. And two, you know what? After she said that anyway, she will vote for him if there is nobody else to vote for. She said she will vote for Trump any day of the week. He dips her in the pile of crap. Maybe now she can see that she's have to stand up for herself and not trying and continuously trying to literally lick his behind.
You know, that's an excellent statement, because this is all of these people. DeSantis came out and endorsed him. Tim Scott, who ran against him, was humiliated. Trump turned around to Tim Scott and goes, "You must really hate Nikki Haley. She appointed you." And he turned around and he came around to face him. He said, "I love you." Well, I mean, that made me squirm. That was disgusting. And now Nikki Haley, you're right. When they all signed the pledge and she said, "I would vote for Trump. He's the only Republican." And now this is how he calls her bird brain. You know, at some point, somebody calls you bird brain. I mean, instead of calling names back, that's high school stuff. That's middle school stuff. Give me a break. I mean, this guy isn't, well, first of all, he's not sane. Second of all, he has early onset dementia. Thirdly, he's a crook and he's betrayed the United States. Other than that, he's terrific. Mark from the SAC, my friend. Thanks for calling. What's your mind today, Mark?
Yeah, I went out today to check out to see what Tom Tiffany or Ron Johnson was saying about the bridge ceremony today up in Superior, or the initiation of that, and neither one of them had anything to say about it. And Tom Tiffany's defense of Donald Trump when it comes to the whole Russia thing is just pretty disgusting. He says there's nothing to it at all, that Russia helped Donald Trump out in 2016. I mean, these guys have no problem lying for Donald Trump. I mean, that it is just it should be deeply disturbing to every citizen that these guys, are all planning to be members in Donald Trump's fan club, and that here's a guy who is now been adjudicated a rapist, and that they're still standing by this man. I mean, it is just
right.
I don't know what kind of mental gymnastics they have to go through to still support this man. And I'll have to go to a Tom Tiffany meeting, because I actually have property up there, and actually challenge him if he's there, and then say, "How dare you, sir? Just how dare you?" And that, but of course, these guys, that I saw, just started reading Malcolm Nance's latest book on They Want to Kill Americans, and some of these conservatives are out there posting on the site that every conservative should go out and shoot 2 liberals. I mean, what is going on with these people? That it's not getting condemned by the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's not being condemned. And if they went out and tried that, remember, there are more combat veterans in union halls than in hedge funds conference rooms. So I wouldn't advise them to try that. But we don't want another civil war. That was absolutely ridiculous. That was the attitude of the South in 1861. It didn't work out so well. Bob of Madison, my friend, thanks for calling. What's in your mind today, Bob?
Well, I finally figured out why the Congress has been so unproductive, the lowest number of bills in many decades. It's all because a lack of imagination.
You should do stand-up on the Today Show, or the Daily Show, whatever the show is. E. Jean Carroll, Trump continued to defame her overnight. He sent out about 35 more defamatory statements about her, lying about her. E. Jean Carroll, she's already nailed him for $5 million. The evidence was cut off today, jury argument tomorrow. Trump disobeyed the judge, got on the stand today for a couple of minutes, said that denied that it occurred, even though the prior jury had found it. Judge cut him off. He struck the testimony. That was it. And then he walks out, Trump going, "This isn't America. This isn't America." Look, you draft dodger back in 1968 when better men than you were going in the service, and you did what? Hang around the nightclubs in New York, lying about your bone spurs, attacking John McCain, making fun of a reporter who was handicapped, aping his handicap motions and all that. The guy is not, it's not that he shouldn't be president. Obviously, he shouldn't be president. And he's a sociopath and a traitor and has dementia. But at some point, people have got to get out there and wake up and say, look, I may agree with some things that the Republicans say that Biden doesn't, but I'm going to find a workaround. This is not going to happen. I am not going to put a crazy man in there who's a mean streak. Crazy man with a mean streak, demeaning women all the time, quite with a sadistic streak, a mean streak and a sadistic streak. Coming up, the compromise on the border and Ukraine and Israel aid is up in the air with some more Trump interference, and I'll give you the Senate reaction coming up. A lot of news, weather, and then that.
Address unknown. No such number, no such zone. Return to sender, return to sender, return to sender, return to sender.
My mom, who just finished her high school diploma. I wanted to say I'm so proud of you for finishing school. You told me it's never too late to achieve your dreams. I hope to make you as proud as you have made me.
When you graduate, they graduate. Finish your high school diploma for you and for them. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
The search is on for our next Alice in Dairyland. I'm Pam Yankee with a quick update on what's happening in food and farming news for a Thursday. Now remember, Alice in Dairyland is basically Wisconsin's agriculture ambassador. It's a marketing position held within the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Ashley Hagenow is our current Alice in Dairyland. And although she came into the position with a pretty solid base of understanding about Wisconsin agriculture, she's still surprised every day with something new.
What has surprised me the most as I've continued to learn more about this industry, especially through attending different events and industry tours, is just how diverse Wisconsin agriculture is. I feel like I had a good grasp on how diverse our industry is, especially through the process of running for Alice in Dairyland myself last year, going through the top candidate journey, learning about some of our top commodities. But I have continued to deepen that knowledge, especially when it comes to the different specialty crops that call the state of Wisconsin home.
Ashley Hagenow, she's our current Alice in Dairyland. That paid position through the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection will accept applications until January 31st. The position is a $45,000 salaried position that allows for use of a program vehicle as well as reimbursement for individual health insurance premiums. You can find out more and apply at aliceinDairyland.com.
Leadership Institute is a year-long premier crash course in personal development, agricultural advocacy, and Wisconsin Farm Bureau that builds up strong Farm Bureau members. I'm proud to be a Wisconsin Farm Bureau member because they invested time and resources in me and my development, and I cannot wait to give a return on that investment.
WFBF.com. A voice for farmers, a vision for agriculture. Wisconsin Farm Bureau. Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
You may know Rural Mutual Insurance as the #1 farm insurer. But did you know they also offer competitive home, auto, business, and life insurance? They make it convenient to bundle your insurance while saving you time and money. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn more.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
And it looks like milk production in the month of December finished flat. Here in Wisconsin, we produced 2.67 billion pounds of milk, basically unchanged compared to a year ago. Our cow numbers also unchanged at 1.27 million head. The 24 major dairy producing states as a group saw December milk production go down about 1/10 of a percentage point. So there's just a quick update on what's happening in food and farming news for you on a Thursday. I'm Farm Director Pam Yankee.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot with a look at your weather ahead. Cloudy and mild today as high temperatures spike to 40 degrees. Widespread fog continues, dense at times, and rain rolls in and ramps up this evening with 1/4 inch to near 1/2 inch possible. Rapid melting and some localized flooding is likely. It's 35 degrees at our studios.
The Todd Alba Show.
The immigration challenge in this country, as Jorge Ramos, the great author, likes to say, you can build as many and high walls and deep walls as you possibly want. But until you start addressing the problem within countries, people will keep coming. For all of our faults, people still look at America as that shining city on a hill and want to come here, and I believe that makes us stronger.
The Todd Alba Show, weekdays noon till 2 on your local civic media radio station and on the app. Your home of the Earl Ingram Show, weekday mornings from 8 till 10 on The Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK. Weekday mornings from 8 till 10.
Welcome back to Matt Flynn Direct. Our lines are open, 844-967-2789. The deal, Ukraine aid, Israel aid, border, is up in the air. Trump has been calling individual senators, urging them, bullying them not to pass it. And he flat out said to them he does not want to give up a major campaign issue in 2024. He wants the border as open as possible and then claim that he can blame Biden for it when Biden has agreed to close it in a very, very definitive fashion, letting in some immigration, but addressing a lot of the concerns right now. Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch. You got to remember something about Moscow Mitch. When he was a congressman from Kentucky about 40 years ago, he was a liberal Republican. He was like George H.W. Bush in 1964 when George H.W. Bush voted for the Civil Rights Act and almost cost him his congressional seat, prevented him from running statewide in Texas. Moscow Mitch is a chameleon. If you ever see a chameleon, down in Florida, I've seen them. They're on a branch. Suddenly they're green because they blend in with the branch. They're brown. They're speckled, whatever they are. That's Moscow Mitch. Moscow Mitch has no core ideology except staying in power. Moscow Mitch told a Republican caucus yesterday, according to reports that came out of it, that they're in a quandary and that they have got to have solidarity with Trump. And Trump's the guy that insulted his wife, insulted her ethnicity, Elaine Chao, and he calls her, Chow, C-H-O-W, instead of the correct pronunciation of the name. Insults Moscow Mitch continuously. Moscow Mitch takes it. Now he says they got to rally around Trump. All he cares about is power. Some more reports today, just before I went on the air, suggest that what he is now saying is he wants to do the deal, but they're in a quandary and there has to be a way to work around Trump. The idea is this. If it passes the Senate with very, very tough border controls that Biden has agreed to, and the Senate on both sides are agreeing to, when it gets to the House, you have the MAGA crowd that'll reject anything. And then you'll have people on the far left in the Democratic Party who won't like some of the border things, and they may not vote for it. But if it gets to the floor, all it has to do is have Mike Johnson send it to the floor. It'll get 300 votes, maybe more. Because right now, we have closed off our store of ammunition to Ukraine because there's no more money because of Congress, because of Trump. Vladimir Putin, genocidal sadist, a rat, deserves to die. He visited Kaliningrad just now. Kaliningrad is on the Baltic. It's not connected to Russia. It used to be part of Germany. And then and it's called Königsberg. And the great philosopher Immanuel Kant lived there, wrote there, and spent his whole life there. After World War II, Stalin demanded a port on the Baltic, even though they're not connected to it, simply because he didn't want to have to access the Baltic, come through the Black Sea to the Dardanelles, out into the Atlantic and around. We should have said no. He was insistent. Could have bombed them, for that matter. But people in the United States were very, very tired after 4 years of World War II. And then it looked like we're going to have to go and invade Japan until Truman dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and stopped it. We would have lost hundreds of thousands of GIs and nobody had the appetite to invade Russia. So he got Kaliningrad. Then, when the Ukraine war broke out, Lithuania did not want the train from Moscow coming to Kaliningrad through its territory and stopped them. The EU overruled Lithuania and the Baltic states and said, you've got to let the trains through. So clown Putin just got through probably on a train because he can't go over their airspace. He's afraid to fly. And he's strutting around Kaliningrad. And everybody is saying, now he's very energized because of Trump. Trump is helping him by stopping Ukraine aid. This has got to stop. It can easily stop in the Senate in two ways. First of all, right now you have Ron Johnson, our senator, as one of the holdouts who will use unanimous consent to stop aid to Ukraine and a border deal to support Trump. You must understand that and understand why the Democrats in this last Senate race really screwed up. The campaign they ran, getting everybody to drop out of the race, for what? You thought that was going to be successful? Keep this guy out? Well, it wasn't successful. But no use crying over spilt milk. That's in the past. What can happen is simply if 9 Republicans join with 51 Democrats, 9 Republicans, 60 votes, and bust the filibuster, because what will happen is if there's a unanimous consent objection by Ron Johnson or Ted Cruz, but any of them, Mike Lee of Utah, that can be tested anyway, and there would then be a filibuster. But 9 votes can overcome that. 9 votes can overcome anything. I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret. You don't even need that. These rules are not in the Constitution. It would be very easy for Schumer to just put it out there anyway, and everybody on the Republican side would say, no, we filibuster, and then Schumer puts out a resolution that the filibuster is waived for this particular bill. And the Senate parliamentarian says that's not appropriate. The Senate parliamentarian can be overruled by a majority, not a supermajority and not 60 votes, and just put it through that way. The problem with that is then it gets to the House, and if it gets to the House, Mike Johnson is afraid of Trump. He'll say, I'm not going to put it on the floor. Then Hakeem Jeffries says, privilege resolution. You've got to put it on the floor in 2 days, but it'll take 2/3. Privilege resolution takes 2/3. I can deliver 213 Democratic votes. I need 70 Republican votes. Put it to a vote. I'm certain that there would be at least 70 Republican votes who would vote for it. But that isn't going to happen. And I'm going to tell you why it's not going to happen. Because the Democrats would not back that up in the Senate. They won't agree to override the filibuster for anything. Moscow Mitch overrode it for cabinet appointments with Trump. None of them were going to get, they would have all been filibustered. All been filibustered, or at least the bad ones. So he said, we're getting rid of it. And we're getting rid of it for Supreme Court appointments. And now they get rid of it for Court of Appeals appointments. We never get rid of it for anything. We didn't get rid of it for voting rights. That was disgusting. The fact of the matter is, on that one, we don't have 51 votes because Sinema and Manchin wouldn't go along. So I get it. There may be some traitors in the Senate caucus, the Democratic caucus. But you must understand something. Because of a handful of rules that enhances their status, both parties in the House and the Senate would stand by while Ukraine gets raped and genocided. You must understand that. And you must understand that to enhance their status, they will do nothing and let the borders continue to have people pour in, continue to have it on TV every night, and not do anything responsible in immigration. You've got to understand that. If you don't understand that, you don't understand politics. How many statesmen are there left in the Congress? Damn few. Very, very few. Now, here's the deal. I saw an interview with Lankford of Oklahoma. By Republican standards, not by human standards, by Republican standards, he seems somewhat reasonable and moderate. You know, he lambasted Biden and the Democrats in it, but in a kind of a soft tone. And he said, we still want to stand by this bipartisan deal. Moscow Mitch, apparently, and he was not in an interview, said something very similar. So it's on life supports, but what it is you have people, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson, who are putting up these objections. And you would think they're U.S. senators, they have a big position. Do they realize that we are beating Russia by spending 4 or 5% of our defense budget and not jeopardizing a single American life? Do you understand that? Do they care? Do they secretly support Russia? Ron Johnson went to Moscow, Russia, 4th of July, 2018, and hung out. Why did he do that? Why did he send that signal that he was betraying our Independence Day? What was the purpose of the trip? He's not an ambassador. He has no expertise. What was in it for him? What did he think was in it for Wisconsin? Wisconsin has a lot of veterans. They don't like that. I don't think he's a veteran. Why did he do that? Why is Cruz siding with Putin? Why is Mike Lee siding with Putin? And then in the House, You have Mike Johnson, who was one of Trump's leading advocates for overturning the election last time, including leading the Republicans to vote against certifying Joe Biden. About 140 of them didn't certify Joe Biden in the House. 140 of them at about 220, 210. Two-thirds of them didn't. Why this treason in the Republican Party? That is not the history of the Republican Party. It really is not. That wasn't Dwight Eisenhower. That isn't Liz Cheney. That isn't Adam Kinzinger, and that isn't Mitt Romney, and that isn't, frankly, a majority of the House and the Senate who are Republicans. But why are they chicken to do something about it? That isn't true of virtually all of Republican voters. Why are you standing by to watch Ukraine get raped and murdered and tortured? For what? There's a deal now on the border. This is being held up by Trump and people who are afraid of Trump and his death threats, these kinds of people, simply to give him a campaign statement, a campaign issue. Dick of Madison, my friend, we have a little bit of time before we break away. What's on your mind today, Dick?
Well, I've never seen anything, Matt, in my life domestically, this border thing, that has such huge implications globally. They're going to hold up this Ukrainian money and do it over this, and it's going to cause a global hardship. I mean, and it's a big win, like you said, for Putin, for Xi in China, on and on and on. I've never seen, though, a domestic problem, this global or this border problem, have such huge implications on the rest of the world, actually, with what they're pulling.
Right. Well, it's had implications in the Middle East, too. You know, Iran has drone factories. They're selling drones to Russia, who are using them to murder civilians in Ukraine. That's what's going on right now there. This somehow, what is it with these senators and the Democrats and the moderate Republicans? What is it that your vanity does? You want compliance with rules that are not in the Constitution to make you look fancier than you are? Get out of there. Get out of there. Stepping away very briefly, and you got to have a little fun. I am going to get to an issue you won't believe about what the Missouri Senate is considering right now, which could involve the murder of a senator right on the floor. Coming up.
'Cause she's a 20th century fox. She's a 20th century fox. Got the world locked up inside.
The Shaw, WAUK.
I got serious about staying fit just a couple of years ago. Now 5Ks, yoga, and smart nutrition are all part of my weekly routine. Part of my eating right plan? Country Hearth breads. Natural breads with the whole grains and natural ingredients my body needs to perform at its best. Just a slice of toasted multigrain with peanut butter before a workout, and I'm ready to roll. Country Hearth is the easy choice because it's good for me and great tasting too. Country Hearth breads, baking our best for you.
Is it Saturday night yet? Hey folks, Jimmy K here. Join me, Rocker and Terry Barr for Max Inc. Saturday Night. It's your weekly look at the Wisconsin music scene with a lot of fun, debut music, interviews with the artist, and live in the lair. It's Max Inc. on Saturday night across the Civic Media Radio Network, Saturday night 6 to 10 p.m. and grab the podcast at maxincradio.com. It's Max Inc. on Civic Media. We are local music.
This is The Shaw.
Welcome back to Matt Flynn Direct. Our lines are open, 844-967-2789. Well, the minute you thought that it would be impossible for the Republican Party under Trump to come up with something this crazy, let me tell you what they're doing down in Missouri. And I question the sanity of any Republican in Missouri who's voting for these guys. There is now a proposal that a state senator, Republican from Missouri, is putting to his colleagues to consider that would permit a senator to challenge another senator to a duel right on the Senate floor with choice of weapon if his honor is insulted. And just so we're clear about this, if you think this is funny, we had dueling in this country, and we had dueling throughout the Western world. Remember, Aaron Burr shot Hamilton, our greatest Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, in a duel, and then Hamilton's son was killed in a duel. Andrew Jackson fought several duels. Finally, and Andrew Jackson, we're talking, somewhat into the 19th century. Finally, dueling was outlawed. The reason it was outlawed is it's absolutely useless and meaningless. You get good people. I mean, Alexander Hamilton he was fairly young. He could have gone on and done a lot more for the United States. Dueling is prohibited by some state constitutions. It would be a felony. It would be murder, homicide in others. You can't have consensual murder. In other words, and we're not talking assisted suicide here. We're talking about somehow you go at each other with guns or knives and one of you dies, the other one gets indicted for homicide. But here is what the legislation or the resolution would be, and it's not clear whether they're going to do it as a rule in the Senate. This is how perverted they are, or whether it's legislation. Here's what it says, quote, if a senator's honor, Trump's honor, if a senator's honor is impugned by another senator to the point that it is beyond repair, and in order for the offended senator to get satisfaction, such senator may ratify or may correct the personal insult of the senator's honor by challenging the offending senator to a duel. A trusted representative known as the second of the offended senator shall send a written challenge to the offending senator. The two senators shall agree to the terms of the duel, including choice of weapons, which shall be witnessed and enforced by their respective seconds. The duel shall take place in the well of the Senate at the hour of high noon on a date agreed to by the parties to the duel, end quote. I mean, they're thinking, what was that, Cary Grant or Gary Cooper? Who was in high noon? I mean, come on. They actually are spending time debating this. We're going to the lines. Bill of Economwalk, my friend. Thanks for calling. What's your mind today, Bill?
Matt, thanks for bringing this up. Another example of who's the adult in the room. There's a bunch of kids. They've been watching Westerns. They like the shootouts at noon, and they believe they need to participate in that. Who is the adult in the Republican Party? You guys have this felon that's running around claiming he's the number one selection for you guys, and he's already been have convictions. He's been convicted of sexual assault. He's been convicted of felonies. These guys, do you really want to go off the deep end with one big splash? I mean, do you really want to do it, guys? You've got to. Somebody, here's my thought, and this would solve it all. Adam Kissinger, if your people are listening, Liz Cheney, if your people are listening, run for office. Good chance you might get in, and then it's done. It's over. It's finished. Thanks for my time, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. Because this really ticks me off that they would spend time doing this with every other issue that's pending out there. And they're following Trump, a guy who has 91 felonies in his indictments, in 4 separate indictments. And some of them are superseding indictments. 91 felonies, boasts on tape that he grabs women between the legs. With E. Jean Carroll, he lies and says he doesn't know her. He gets nailed for $5 million, and then he shows up at this trial and busts the judge, and finally the judge says, get out of here. This guy's running for office. This guy's running for president, and this is the clownish stuff they do. Most of them couldn't shoot straight. They'd shoot their toes if they tried to pull a gun out. They don't know what they're doing. Most of them weren't veterans. You're right. They've watched High Noon. They watched Gunsmoke. Remember Gunsmoke? Matt Dillon walked down Main Street at the end and gunned a guy down. That's what they think. These people are crazy. Stephen of Green Bay, you're calling again, my friend. What's up?
Yeah, I'm calling again. This time I have a little more fervor in my message than I did the first time, because I think it's a little more ridiculous than Trump, who we already know is ridiculous. The fact that people in the Senate and the state of Missouri are taking time out of their day to debate if they should murder each other on the floor of the Senate versus take care of, I don't know, maybe your constituents that voted you in the first place, is absolutely appalling. Where do they find these senators that run in the Republican Party? Do they go to like the dementia homes around the country and you look like you could pass as a Republican, and pull them out of there and put them in a race, and then enough people vote them in? Or what happens with that? It's absolutely ridiculous. They can't pass a bill with meaning to save their soul, but they can debate whether or not they should murder each other on the floor of the people in the state of Missouri. This is absolutely appalling. Appalling, Matt.
Right. Well, I'm glad somebody else appalled. I'm damned appalled. And if you take a look at the history of dueling prior to us being outlawed in the United States and everywhere else, they would slap each other with gloves, or they'd send an insulting note, and then they'd show up and they'd stand there and they'd take turns shooting each other. I'm surprised some of them the night before didn't waylay the other guy and gun him down. I mean, these people are crazy. This is the Senate, not even the Assembly, the Senate in Missouri. This is too much. This is way too much. Coming up, a lot of news, a lot of weather, and then an application of DEI in this state that I, as a Democrat, think goes too far, and we have got to address some of these issues. Coming up.
The hard way. You're gonna take the hard way.
Waukesha, home of Les Paul, our awesome farmers markets, and The Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM, WAUK.
Hey, this is Aaron from the Todd Albaugh Show. On Friday, Todd continues his winter tour around Wisconsin, and we are joined by Peter Rapine of eBaum's World. Join us noon to 2.
I'm Dr. Jasmine Zapata, Chief Medical Officer for Community Health at the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. Every year in the U.S., about 21,000 lung cancer deaths are caused by radon, an odorless, tasteless, and colorless gas. 1 in 10 Wisconsin homes has high levels of radon. Does yours? Call 1-888-LOW-RADON or visit lowradon.org to learn more. Test, fix, save a life.
Sponsored by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services.
You're listening to The Shaw, WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266DR Waukesha, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
CBS News Brief. .org after a COVID delay, with the former president taking the stand in his own defense. CBS's Errol Barnett.
Closing arguments will begin tomorrow, and then the jury will decide whether or not Ms. Carroll is deserving of $10 million more or less based on the evidence presented here.
Trump said he stands by his deposition. Critics are slamming Alabama's planned use of nitrogen gas tonight to execute a convicted killer. Criminologist Deborah Deno.
Kenneth Smith is definitely a guinea pig. I mean, he's going to be subject to a method of execution, which, as far as we know, has never been used in the history of the world.
And strong storms aren't letting up on soaking the South. Weather Channel meteorologist Stephanie Abrams.
Just through Friday, we could get another 3 to 5 inches, and a lot of this is on already saturated ground. And that's one of the reasons that our flood threat continues over the next couple of days in the Southeast.
CBS News Brief. I'm Monica Ricks.
Civic Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Democrats are complaining Republicans are in such a hurry to pass new legislative maps that the public hasn't had a chance to look at them closely. Assembly Speaker Robert Vos says Republicans aren't to blame.
We didn't set the process. That was determined by the court. They put this super expedited timeline together and said you must act by these dates. It wasn't us.
The state Supreme Court says it'll draw new maps if lawmakers and the governor don't do it themselves. President Biden is in Wisconsin today to talk about his administration's efforts to rebuild the nation's infrastructure. Biden is in Superior, where $1 billion from Washington is paying for replacing a major bridge to Duluth. The $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law is paying for road and bridge repairs across the nation. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Now, here's what you need to know closer to home.
For WAUK News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. The man arrested for attempting to kidnap a woman in Milwaukee was in court today. Following an altercation at the beer depot on January 15th, a 37-year-old Waukesha man was arrested and charged with attempted kidnapping, false detention, and disorderly conduct. According to the victim, the suspect lifted her up in the parking lot and grabbed her jacket. The man took off when the store manager intervened. He was later located. Local kids are encouraged to come drop a line next month. Milwaukee County Parks is hosting free ice fishing clinics for kids. It's in collaboration with the DNR and the Hunger Task Force, and it's being held Saturday, February 17th. The clinics will take place on 5 area urban waters. Local fishing clubs will provide instruction on ice safety and fishing skills. And that's what you need to know. I'm Stuart J. Waddles, WAUK News.
The Todd Alba Show.
Luke Mathers, it's time for Tuesday Tangents with Lukester.
Everybody announced yesterday, schools are closed tomorrow. I feel like a boomer almost here, Todd, where I'm like, back in my day, we never got a snow day in advance. I remember sitting patiently, like cross-legged in front of the television set, just waiting for the little ticker to scroll by. And if you missed it alphabetically, you had to sit there even longer.
The Todd Alba Show. Weekdays noon till 2 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app.
The Bucks beat the Cavaliers. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Bucks with a 126-116 win over the visiting Cavaliers. Giannis with 35 points, 18 rebounds, 10 assists, and was asked for his reaction that the team had fired head coach Adrian Griffin.
For a coach like Griff, I think from day one everything was about togetherness. We're human. It hurts.
Bucks GM John Horst.
Adrian is a great person. Brought a lot to the franchise. We're thankful for that, and I'm thankful for the time that we had with him. But we also believe that we had an opportunity now. The team itself had changed from when we hired him, and we felt like we had an opportunity to improve and to get better.
College basketball, Marquette down to Paul in Chicago, 86-73. The Badgers will host the Michigan State Spartans tomorrow night. Michigan head football coach Jim Harbaugh leaving after winning the national championship. He's returning to the NFL as head coach of the LA Chargers. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot with a look at your weather ahead. Cloudy and mild today as high temperatures spike to 40 degrees. Widespread fog continues, dense at times, and rain rolls in and ramps up this evening with 1/4 inch to near 1/2 inch possible. Rapid melting and some localized flooding is likely. It's 35 degrees at our studios.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
Outgoing Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm. The way I joke about it is I'm probably not doing my job right if somebody's not ticked off at me most of the time.
The only way you can do it is if you have that steadfast commitment to doing justice. That tension's built into it, and that's quite frankly what makes the job just so phenomenal and exciting and fun.
The Maggie Dawn Show, weeknights at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app. Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin. Find your favorites at civicmedia.us. Whether you're heading down Les Paul Parkway or fighting traffic on the interstates, this is The Shaw.
Talking on all political subjects and taking on all callers, this is Matt Flynn Direct with your host, Matt Flynn.
Welcome back to the second hour of Matt Flynn Direct, coming to you live statewide on Civic Media. Lines are open, 844-967-2789. No subject is off limits, and all points of view are welcome. I want to say something about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and I want to say something about common sense. As a Democrat, we are committed to civil rights, and we are committed to the absolute acceptance and integration of all people, regardless of race, color, creed, or anything else, into our society. And I think the idea of having people at the university level who are encouraging kids who come from backgrounds, for instance, that maybe they're first generation college, maybe they're having a hard time fitting in, eliminating all discrimination against them. That is a core value of the Democratic Party, and it always has been. But I think it's possible for common sense to say, wait a minute, when you see things that I think actually are counter to that. And here's one I want to raise right now. At the University of Wisconsin Law School, and I'm an alum of the University of Wisconsin Law School. I had 3 great years there in Madison. It was a great time in my life. I was the editor-in-chief of the Wisconsin Law Review, and I had a wonderful experience, wonderful faculty, and wonderful fellow students. But there are now apparently 2 mandatory courses for law students. They're going into law school first year and then after the first semester, DEI courses. And they bring in what's called the social justice educator. I assume it's not a regular member of the faculty. And in this last one, students, this is how she instructs it. Students were asked to share, quote, words, phrases, stereotypes, slurs, words of bias that could be associated with minority groups or any group. And people were encouraged and required by the pressure of that course to say slurs, which I'm not going to repeat on this air, against Black people, Native Americans, Asians, Middle Eastern people. And they were all taken very seriously, but these slurs sting, and they were said in the classroom at the University of Wisconsin. Then they were asked about slurs against white people, which I'm also not going to repeat. And that was handled with a little more levity. And people are sitting there suddenly looking at each other, and it's a very diverse law school, and there's no discrimination at all in enrollments, and hearing slurs and saying slurs about one another. And then part of the instruction was, quote, white people benefit from racial oppression, regardless of their actions. There are no exceptional white people, end quote. That's a false statement. There are a heck of a lot of people of all colors and creeds, ethnicities, fighting for civil rights. Apparently, the American Bar Association has a requirement that the school provide education on bias and racism. It's a very general requirement, but I think that should be satisfied by, you read The Invisible Man, you read some great literature about the loneliness, the oppressiveness of being a minority individual in a majority society, and I think that's terrific. But the problem is that this DEI stuff hasn't worked at all on the metrics that I think it should work in Wisconsin. African American or Black enrollment went up 1%, I think, over the last couple of years, in single digits, very low single digits. Same with Latino, or I should say indigenous enrollment. Latino enrollment went up more. But DEI is no longer, in my opinion, being used to encourage and accept and help succeed minority students or any students. It's being done to put people in the classroom and talk about slurs that sting to the core. And there's absolutely no absolutely no justification for that. There's no educational benefit in that. It divides people. It simply fans the flames of identity politics and divides us as a nation. And it's a very, very, very bad problem. It's worse in other schools. In George Washington University in the Washington, D.C. area, a very fine one, there was a teacher who really retaliated against Jewish students and Israeli students. And she finally, they let her go, and she went back to the Middle East somewhere in Qatar, I think, and is teaching there. Out in California, there was a teacher in one of these courses who made the Jewish students stand up and stand in a quarter to see how isolated they would feel. There's no science to this. There's no education to this. This is a perversion of the idea of acceptance, a perversion of the idea of embracing people and helping them if they're, especially if they're first generation college, and that's not simply minority kids. That's kids from everywhere in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, everywhere else. It should be a welcoming environment. But when you have somebody, and I don't know what kind of training these instructors have. I don't know what the educational basis is for what they're doing. I don't know what the science is. For somebody to sit people in a chair, in their chairs, and they look at each other, and they were friends. You know, maybe they played cards. We used to play hearts, and we'd play sheep's head, play poker in the lounge at the law school. Go out to Bob and Jean's, which is probably no longer there, have a few beers, University Avenue. And then suddenly you're sitting around exchanging slurs. That's frankly disgusting. And there's one other thing, and this is people getting rid of their common sense, in my opinion. Their common sense. Let me give you an example. During Pride Month, they have a naked bike ride. Frankly, I don't think naked people should ride through crowds in a city. If they want to be naked, they should get out to a nudist colony out in the bushes, out in the suburbs somewhere of Dane County, wherever they have one. But this last time, they had a 10-year-old girl in it. And this 10-year-old girl had boots and a helmet, and that was it. And she was photographed and put on Facebook. And the DA in Dane County said that because the intent wasn't sexual, no one could be prosecuted. That's absolutely bad law. It's not an intent crime at all. And a professor at the University of Wisconsin Law School said that, agreed, and said that they couldn't be prosecuted. What it comes down to, and let's be very, very clear here, if you have a naked 10-year-old girl in a bike ride in Madison, and at the end of it, they drink white wine at the picnic, there's no prosecution. If you brought her to Milwaukee in West Allis and did it in the 4th of July parade and you drank beer at the picnic, there would be a prosecution. So I've had enough of all this stuff. The deal is this. We're very welcoming and embracing society and very, very supportive of people's private choices and absolutely colorblind and supportive of every individual human being in this state, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of anything, any immutable characteristic. But when you put them in a classroom and have them exchanged vicious slurs to one another, for what purpose? Where's the science of this? There is no science. And I think, at some point, it's worse in the Ivy League. Right now, by the way, the alumni of Cornell are getting together to throw out their president, who's no good. These people are all intimidated. But the president of Harvard, they threw her out. They threw out president of the University of Pennsylvania. And several others should go too. They're intimidated. Well, let me tell you something. The University of Wisconsin is a great university. At one time, Madison was ranked number 34 in the world, not just the United States. We're talking Oxford and Cambridge. We're talking the Sorbonne, Salamanca. We're talking Heidelberg, talking Moscow, China, everywhere. The Ivy League, every state, private university in the United States. Number 34 in the world. And at some point, it's going to take a shakeup, in my view, of people right from the top. chancellors and deans, but also administrators of the whole system. Somebody's got to get some common sense and knock this stuff out. All right, I'm going to go to the lines. Jim in Milwaukee, thanks for calling. What's in your mind today, Jim?
Hi, I'm interested in DEI, and what I've found is most people don't know what DEI stands for even, which is, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I, as an educator, dealt with a lot of different kids in the classroom, different times, and as well as parents and teachers with different ideas. This is an important thing, because people need to come together around some of the things you talked about earlier about, the value of diversity, making sure that the inclusion is occurring, make sure equity takes place. And both students and teachers need to hold discussions about this and follow a curriculum which is well developed, and not some of the examples that you used, which I really question making generalized comments about DEI based on one or two examples. And I think the jury's out on that as to how, but as I've read some of the policies of the universities, that's not what they're talking about. In fact, good DEI would teach instructors not to teach the way you mentioned. And so I think it's important that we do not generalize about DEI based on examples, but that we maintain higher standards for DEI in the institutions. And the same thing is true in business, where people are doing it. This is just, young people today just laugh at a lot of the racism that we see, because they're beyond that, just like they're beyond homophobia. And, the world's moving that direction. And we do need to make sure, though, when kids come from areas where they're in the suburbs, they're up north, they've never run into a black person before. Maybe they've got some Native Americans in the area. The DEI intention is to bring people together.
Right. Jim, that's an excellent call. We've got to step away for a second. I can't thank you enough for calling. I hope you do in the future. And I agree with you 100%. And the examples that I gave, I think, should be rejected. But I agree with you about the core value of DEI. Coming up, Sonia Chutkin is scheduling another case that could interfere with the Trump trial coming up.
Go tell that long-tongued liar. Go and tell that midnight rider. Tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter. Tell him that God's gonna cut you down. Tell him that God's gonna cut you down. Tell him that God's gonna cut you down.
Is me, Gene Okerlund, and I'm talking with Brett Yulberg, owner of Robert Hack Diamonds. Brett, I hear you pay cash for gold.
Not only gold, but silver, diamonds in any form like jewelry, teeth, coins, flatware.
Why should I sell you my gold?
Why not? Our store is the only store that recommends you shop around before you sell. This way you know you're getting the most money. But if Robert Hack Diamonds can't beat a competitor's offer on your scrap gold, we'll give you $20 just for letting us try.
Hey, what if I'm shy?
You? Well, at Robert Hack Diamonds, we sit with you at a table. We go through your items and make you an offer. You're not pressured, and we offer more on jewelry that we can resell.
Can I trade my gold for a new piece of jewelry?
Of course you can, and not only that, we can custom make a piece of jewelry using your gold and gems.
Hey, there you have it, folks. Sell your gold to my friends at Robert Hack Diamonds. Visit them on 76th and Layton in Greenfield. Robert Hack Diamonds.
Welcome back to Matt Flynn Direct. Our lines are open, 844-967-2789. That was a great call from Jim. And I'm very pleased to have him say it as well as he did, that the core of a well-thought-out DEI curriculum is essential. It's essential to breaking down barriers and accepting one another. And what I have described, which is happening, according to reports at the University of Wisconsin Law School, was certainly not that. And it's got to be absolutely clear that we're not going to use the appearance or pretense of DEI to drive more wedges between people. That's got to stop. Cassandra Madison, my friend, thanks for calling, Cassandra. What's in your mind today?
Hi,
Hi, Matt. Thanks for taking my call. And I really enjoyed listening to Jim a few moments ago and his experience with VMI. I am an educator in higher education, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on it. And I have not seen the article from the UW Law School. I'll have to Google and look it up. But from my observation, sometimes I find that the individuals who many of these educational institutions bring into the classroom have absolutely no formal training or research or credentials to teach the class. Oftentimes they are advocates. And there's a difference between people who are advocates and those who are actually researchers in the field. And so I would encourage educational institutions, if they are going to include DEI in some form or another, the people you bring into that classroom should be trained with some kind of educational degree in the field. They should not be advocates. And what you described, what the guest speaker asked the classmates to do, I find that highly unacceptable. I have taught classes in race and ethnicity, and when I teach my class, I present the topic in a way with the understanding that there are students who have not been introduced to certain, or they do not have experiences with race. There are students from rural backgrounds where they have lived in very homogenous communities, and there's just a lot they don't know. Oftentimes they're afraid to ask. It's a little awkward, and we have to leave open that possibility that people are not being racist or any other of the isms. It's just that they have not had many encounters with a lot of people. And the educational institution should be a place for students to explore, learn, and ask questions without judgment. So I have not been pleased with the way DEI has been presented in many of the classrooms, and we do need trained people in order to do it. Well, Matt, thanks for letting me give my opinion on the matter.
I love your calls, Cassandra. Call more often. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I've got to say, just listening to you and Jim, the articulateness and the passion behind it and the authenticity behind it, I wish we could bottle that and tape it and send it around, have that in all the DEI classes. I couldn't agree more. What you said and what Jim said is humane. It's the right thing to do. And you may have put your finger on it, because whenever there's any kind of, and when an industry arises, you get a lot of people coming in and they claim they're experts in all this. And apparently what's happening on the fringes is that people are using it in a very divisive way and sort of to pit people against each other. And I think that's a huge mistake. But the way you and Jim just described it, it was terrific. That's all I can say. It was absolutely terrific. Thank you. Well, poor Tanya Chutkan, she has just scheduled a trial for April 2nd of a January 6th insurrectionist. So why is that relevant or important? Because our friend, I should say, I'm saying it sarcastically, a demented sociopath who's running for president, Donald Trump's trial is March 4. And she is obviously keeping in mind that possibly through appeals and skirmishing and lying and so on, that Trump will somehow get it booted. I am not as pessimistic about it as others. Very, very common for some judges will schedule two trials for the same day, thinking one of them will be resolved somehow, and they keep their calendar free. If Trump goes on March 4, then she can easily postpone the other one. But stand by. I think that going on the back of her mind, you've seen what his lawyers did, claiming they had COVID or might have COVID in one of the cases, and everything goes up to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. She's sort of hedging her bets here is what's going on. Eric of Wauwatosa, thanks for calling. What's your mind, Eric?
Yeah, hello, Matt. I'd like to say that I heard you earlier talking about and I don't know much about the article and who the source was and who had reported this classroom incident. But I think earlier you said something about exceptional white people, and I was wondering if what you meant was the article said, without exception, all white people benefit. Like, not exceptional, but no white people are the exception in that we all benefit from the system as it is. Is that a better way to say that?
That might be, but I'm not. I'm simply quoting, and so I'll quote again. And I object to this, the methodology of this instructor, and that has got to change. Let me look back here and find out exactly what they said. But no, that wasn't. It was not that. And I didn't repeat any of the slurs and so forth because, frankly, they were disgusting and they have no business being in it. But here's I will read you again what was in the article. Google the article. You can easily Google the article. And what was said was this. They were told to come up with slurs, bad things about different groups, and say them out loud to one another. And then it says, this is in the instructional materials, quote, white people benefit from racial oppression regardless of their actions. There are no exceptional white people. Now, what I interpret that to mean is that no matter how good a white person you are, you benefit from it, and there's no exception to that rule. But those are the words, Eric, okay? And they're not my words, and I'm not going to say how I would do it better. I wouldn't do any of it. I would do what Jim said, and I would do what Cassandra said, which is to take into account everybody, assuming people are in good faith, and instruct them in diversity, equity, and inclusion, but not divide them. And this is my concern, that they are being divided. Thanks a lot for calling. Call anytime, Eric. Okay, we're going to step away for a little bit here. A lot of news, a lot of weather, and you will not believe what Greg Abbott and they're doing in Texas against the federal government. Coming up.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds. Because you're mine, I walk the line.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app. The Todd Alba Show.
Matt Flynn, thanks for joining us. As an attorney who's been in a lot of courtrooms, Trump may insist on giving part of his closing oral arguments on this case. I'm not sure if you ever saw the ABC series Boston Legal with William Shatner as Denny Crane. We're approaching Denny Crane territory here.
That's flat out crazy. It's like taking out your own appendix with a Bowie knife and you have no anesthesia. You don't know what the hell you're doing.
The Todd Alba Show. Weekdays noon till 2 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app. This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
I'm Stephanie Hoff for the Midwest Farm Report along with you on a Thursday. Pork producers had a tough year with low hog prices. Extension Agricultural Marketing Specialist Brenda Botel says that's been due to lower demand for pork. But she says that there's another variable in 2024 that is cause for concern. California's Proposition 12 regulation is creating uncertainty for the pork market.
Producers, in order to be able to have their pork sold in California, they have to meet the guidelines of the pork production under that initiative, which means that a lot of producers will have to change barns, facilities, things like that in order to be able to meet those guidelines if they want that pork to be sold there. California as a state consumes the largest amount of pork in the United States. So the fact that that's going to create a lot of upheaval, because if we have pork that's produced that's not under those guidelines, it can't be sold in California. Is it then going for the export market? Is it then going to other retail stores to other states within the United States? That's going to create a lot of variability and a lot of uncertainty yet.
Extension Specialist Brenda Botel along with us. She's also the chair of the Department of Agricultural Economics at UW River Falls. Stick around for a look at your closing commodity prices up next.
Fabulous Farm Babe. Glad to be joined in studio today by Doug Munson. He is the gentleman that is working in conjunction with the Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board to make things happen here in the state of Wisconsin. What starts in Wisconsin can have a ripple effect across the United States.
That's what we always hope for, is what are those ripple effects? For every dollar that's invested, it's a return of $12.34. How those investments really bring value, they can be debated or they can be looked at in many different ways. Biodiesel brings, I think we say over $1 now. Years ago before inflation, we'll say it was 63 cents to a bushel of soybeans that brought that value. Whether it's 63 cents or it's $1, it's $1.34, which we've heard as high as that amount. That's a huge amount of value to your bushel of soybeans. So those are the things that are ripple effects, right? That can start in Wisconsin or sometimes at the national level, but have big impact in the world of soybean.
Doug Munson in studio with me on behalf of the Wisconsin Soybean Association and the Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board, the financial driving force behind our research that's done here in the state of Wisconsin. For more, pop on over to cornsoyexpo.org.
On the close Thursday from Chicago, cash corn is down 1/2 cent. December new crop corn is down 1.5 pennies at 4.80 3/4. Soybeans took a fall today. Cash beans down 17 1/4 cents, and November new crop beans closing down 11 3/4 at 11.96 1/4. Taking a look at fluid milk, the February Class 3 milk contract is up 27 cents at 15.85 a hundredweight. March milk is also up 27 cents at 16.13. Barrel cheese closed down 1 3/4 at $1.44. The 40-pound block cheese closed up 2 1/4 cents at $1.52 1/4, and double A butter was up 11 cents at 2.68 3/4. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Stephanie Hoff.
The Civic Media Network of radio stations across Wisconsin. It's your hometown radio. Refreshed.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot with a look at your weather ahead. Cloudy and mild today as high temperatures spike to 40 degrees. Widespread fog continues, dense at times, and rain rolls in and ramps up this evening with 1/4 inch to near 1/2 inch possible. Rapid melting and some localized flooding is likely. It's 35 degrees at our studios.
I was proud to be a soldier.
I told the truth and got kicked out. And so I thought to myself, I'm taking this rule down.
If you're an LGBTQ plus veteran, your memories are important too. Share your story with the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, where firsthand accounts from U.S. military veterans are preserved and made accessible for researchers and future generations. Visit loc.gov/vets to submit your stories, photographs, and documents today.
Broadcasting to Waukesha at 101.1 FM. Broadcasting to Southeast Wisconsin at 540 AM.
I'm not talking about 1861. Here's what Governor Abbott did. I'm going to give you a little background from yesterday and from the Supreme Court decision. Remember, there's a Supreme Court decision that vacated a Fifth Circuit decision upholding Abbott's right to put razor wire on the border near the river, injuring migrants. And remember, some of these poor people, a woman and her 2 kids, drowned. And Abbott would not let federal agents nearby to help them, exclude them by the Texas National Guard. There was a lawsuit, and a trial judge, a district judge, they call him at the trial court, ruled that the federal government could take down the razor wire that Abbott had put up to injure the migrants. That was appealed by Abbott to the Court of Appeals, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is the most conservative in the country. A lot of Trump appointees, but more importantly, it's always been conservative. It's on the South. Remember, there are numbered courts of appeals throughout the country that comprise all states. Right now, I'm broadcasting from Milwaukee. Milwaukee in Wisconsin is in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. The headquarters are in Chicago. And the judges are appointed appellate judges to look at cases, consider cases on appeal from Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois. Well, the Fifth Circuit is a number of southern states, including Texas. The Fifth Circuit overturned the district court and said that no, Abbott had the right to put the razor wire there, and that the federal government could not come in and cut it. Now, that was such a lawless opinion. One of the preeminent parts of our Constitution, there are many of them. You're familiar with the Bill of Rights, you're familiar with the First Amendment, Second Amendment, and so on. But one of the preeminent parts of our Constitution is that the federal government trumps the state government. In other words, when push comes to shove, if there's a law on something and it's in contradiction to a federal law, the state law yields. There are no exceptions. And that's it. And there's certain things that are only a matter of federal law. For instance, like copyright and patents. So for them to say that Texas law trumps federal law when the federal agents are going in to take down something at our border, this involves immigration. This involves our border. That's not in the state provinces. That is something exclusively for the federal government. It went up to the Supreme Court. There were 6 tarantulas. 4 of them did something predictable, but 2 of them sided with the 3 Democrats. And those 2 were Amy Coney Barrett, John Roberts, the Chief Justice. So for a 5-4 decision, they ruled that the federal government can go in and remove the razor wire. Abbott is a sneaky, sly sort. By the way, he's pushing very hard to be the presidential nominee, and don't rule him out. He's really bad news, by the way. So he said, well, yeah, they said the feds could come in, but it didn't say we couldn't put it up. And so they keep putting it up. And a few federal agents come in and take it down right when they put it up. But, Biden has a couple of other things to think about. Ukraine, the Red Sea, the Houthis, Gaza, Israel, Taiwan, China. I mean, are you kidding me? And so the net is that there's more razor wire being put up. Then Texas is excluding some federal agents from the border, even though it's our border collectively. It's not Texas's border alone. And here's what he said. What he said was, we are following the supreme law of the land. There's a concept among the sort of survivalists and others that there's some kind of overarching supreme law that's supreme even over our Constitution. And it says Texas has a right to self-defense. So the Texas National Guard can assert power over the federal government in Texas. That may sound familiar. South Carolina said that when they fired on Fort Sumter. Texas said that in 1861. There are a number of battles. You may have heard of them. Bull Run, Antietam, Shiloh. Wisconsin sent regiments down there. Regiments from Wisconsin, from Milwaukee, Racine, Janesville, Madison, elsewhere. We don't want that again. You cannot have individual states say that what they're doing trumps what the federal government law is. In Missouri, they passed a law that said that federal gun regulations were no good in Missouri. Missouri's were more permissive. That got overruled by a judge. But it holds things up, and you have to have a U.S. attorney that's willing to bring the prosecution. So down in Texas, what's going to happen? Let me tell you, and then I'll get to the lines. I see you on the lines. Do not hang up. But Eisenhower ran into this in the late 1950s. People resisted Brown versus Board of Education. They resisted federal law. And Alabama would not admit black students to the University of Alabama. So what happened was Eisenhower sent troops down there to escort the kids in. And the Alabama National Guard rose up, like the Texas National Guard now. And you know what Eisenhower did? He federalized them. You may not know that the National Guards, the commander-in-chief is Joe Biden. It's not Greg Abbott, even the Texas National Guard. As long as Biden doesn't assert the control, it's Abbott. But if Biden says, I want the Texas National Guard to go to the Red Sea and fight the Houthis, they're going to be there tomorrow. And if Abbott tries to interfere, Abbott's going to jail. That's the way it works. Now, here is the problem. We're going to go to the lines, but here's the problem. Biden is not in the same position as Dwight Eisenhower. Back then, there was general goodwill and unanimity in the North anyway, and most of the country, to not let states interfere with the federal government, number one. Number two, when he went down he sent troops to Alabama, and the Alabama National Guard was there and he federalized them, nobody questioned his ability to do it. It's the truth. It's in the Constitution, but nobody questions his ability to do it. Now you have Donald Trump fanning all this stuff. He wants immigration to be the issue that gets him into the White House and keeps him out of prison. It's the only reason he's doing it. So if Biden sends federal troops down there, he's resisted doing that as much as possible, doesn't want to use federal troops against our own people. Because Trump wanted to do that for bad reasons. But even if Biden did it for Eisenhower-type reasons, the optics of it don't look good. There'll be cries of, well, why don't you keep them on the border and keep everybody out? Saudi Arabia, they shoot refugees seeking asylum from Yemen. Trying to get into Saudi Arabia, they machine gun them. In China, they expel them back to North Korea where they're tortured and killed. Nobody criticizes that. Nobody even mentions it. But here is the dilemma for Biden. The agents of the federal government have to have the right, the Border Patrol, to patrol the border. The Texas National Guard is interfering with that on orders from this Greg Abbott. They're putting up razor wire, I think, in violation of the Supreme Court opinion, because the Supreme Court said the federal government can take it down. That inferentially means the federal government wants it down, you don't put it up. He wants another lawsuit out of this. Trump will weigh in. Cornyn and Cruz will take the side of Abbott. We have a mini civil war in the making. Instead of shooting at a fort in Fort Sumter, South Carolina, this is happening by guerrilla warfare around the country. And thank God we have Joe Biden in there with wisdom and experience and decency, and not a proto-fascist like Donald Trump. We're going to the line. Todd or Billy, thanks for calling. What's on your mind today, Todd or Billy?
Hey, Matt. I'm just curious about what you're talking about. Is this referred to as the supremacy clause? And I'm curious about how that works with recreational marijuana law. I thought that was maybe an example of state law being in conflict with national law.
Yeah, that's an excellent. Yeah, it is the supremacy of the federal government. But I'll give you three examples. One is gun legislation in Missouri. The other one are sanctuary cities, say in New York and Chicago and Milwaukee, for that matter. And number three is marijuana. The supremacy clause is supreme. So, and it does, so anybody on the left will say one thing, the right will forget it. The federal government controls. So gun laws in Missouri, federal gun laws should be enforced in Missouri regardless of what the Missouri legislature says, especially now they apparently want to pass a right to challenge a guy to a duel or a woman to a duel. I don't know. They try to intimidate people and pull out a pistol, and yeah, they're sick. They're very sick. When it comes to marijuana, marijuana is listed as a certain kind of substance that's illegal by the federal government. Some states have legalized it. some for medical reasons, some totally. I think Oregon and Washington totally. I think Illinois maybe totally. The subtext of all that is if the federal government were serious about enforcing the criminal law, those state laws are no defense at all. The dirty little secret is the federal government is winking. But when it comes to funding it, there are a lot of people, a lot of lenders that won't lend to the industry because unless there's a much clear indication of federal approval of it, there is that conflict in the law. So when you smoke a joint in Illinois, Oregon, or Washington, are you taking a risk of federal prosecution? Not really, because wink, wink. The society's changing, but it has nothing to do with any yielding of rights by the federal government unless they decide to take marijuana off of their list of prescribed substances. How about sanctuary cities? That was discussed a couple of sessions ago. The thing about sanctuary cities is there is no law that says that if ICE calls the sheriff of Milwaukee and says, tell me who's in your jail and are there citizens? So therefore, the Common Council can say, or the county board can say, we're a sanctuary city or a sanctuary county. If the federal government passed a law that said the federal government on inquiry of law enforcement in anywhere in the United States, there must be cooperation, that's it. There wouldn't be any sanctuary cities. The only reason there are sanctuary cities is because right now it was always presumed. Now, here's the thing. The whole idea about sanctuary cities is well-intentioned. But in California, and I've said this before, guy got out. He'd come into the United States a number of times. He was a criminal. He was in jail. He got out, and that was not reported to ICE. And he shot a girl walking with her father in one of the piers down there. And if it had been reported to ICE, he would have been deported. So there has got to be a consensus in the United States, bipartisan, of what we're going to do with immigration. But when there is consensus, whatever the federal rules are on it or the federal laws on it are going to be absolutely enforceable against any state, regardless of their law. We'll step away. Coming up, Republican Chairman DeWitt in Arizona has stepped down because of the taped call with Carrie Lake. There's some developments on that coming up.
Where it will go.
WAUK. Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
A heads up before something bad happens.
You should not send that text.
Uh-oh. Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes, you can reverse prediabetes and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. To learn your risk, take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
We all have someone we love, like the favorite lyric in our favorite song. You can't imagine life without them. Cancer screening tests can help keep the person you love around longer by detecting changes before cancer develops, or catch it early when it may be easier to treat. And many tests are available for free or are covered by insurance. It's time to sound like a broken record. Tell all your friends and family, I love you. Get screened. Visit cancer.org/getscreened to learn more.
You're listening to the show.
Come gather around, people, wherever you roam.
Welcome back to Matt Flynn Direct. Our lines are open, 844-967-2789. We're going right to the lines. Wisco Paul, my friend. Thanks for calling, Wisco Paul. What's in your mind today?
Oh, thanks for taking my call, Matt. Thanks for the informative show today. You know, you can't run away from Biden's age, so don't. Biden is young for his age. You only have to look at Warren Buffett. He's 93 years old, and he manages, I don't know how much money, but it's an unbelievable amount of money. And in my lifetime, I can't think of a president that's done a better job in his first almost 3.5 years with all the adversity he suffered. So, just run into your age, Joe. You're in really good shape, and think about guys like Warren Buffett. But the other three really important points, and actually there's four about Biden. He does like Social Security. He does like Medicare, and he does like the Affordable Care Act. And I don't know where Trump stands on any of that stuff because you can't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. So, and he doesn't want to be a dictator, not even for a day. So, I just wish people to think about that when they look at Joe Biden. Age is only a number, and that is so true. And I don't care who he runs again; he's gonna win. But when you look at the elections, it does come down to 5 states. I'm not worried about Wisconsin. I'm not worried about Pennsylvania. But anyway, I just want to say the things about President Biden, and I wish people would think about that and then take a hard look at Trump. So with that, you have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Paul. That's an excellent call, as always. Let me respond to a couple of things. On Social Security, Biden is the most pro-union president we've ever had. He's probably the strongest supporter of Social Security, and he won't permit it to be tampered with. And Trump is all over the place on that. He has supported privatizing it in the past, which would mean that you would be getting, you already can. You can already start an IRA or a 401k anyway, or a 403b or whatever, wherever you work. So it would be something like that, which you can do anyway. And then your employer would put something in it instead of Social Security. That's a very bad idea. The average person is not a professional investor. They chase the rainbow. They'll chase gold. They'll chase, crypto. They'll chase all this stuff. And they turn 65, they're not going to have any money. They'll get cheated out of the money. With Social Security, you got to check. You got to check, period. And even if you've had a tough life, it'll probably be enough. You can rent an apartment somewhere with heat, basically, and buy some food. The Republican Party overall has looked on Social Security hungrily as, the goose that lays the golden eggs. It's sort of like a wolf comes to a meat house and sees all the steak and they want to eat it. I mean, I'm not kidding. These guys are bad news. And the same with Medicare. What they want to do is voucherize it, privatize Social Security, voucherize Medicare. You get a voucher for $10,000, spend it any way you want. So you go out and some shyster will come up and they'll go, all right, I'll do you. But then they won't do pre-existing conditions. They'll send you to some quack. They'll object to everything unless you have a lawyer in the family. Did you ever try to fight with an insurance company? You ever do that? If you don't have a lawyer in the family, you're out of luck. And the truth of the matter is that if it was voucherized, basically poor people or people that didn't know how to respond would die. Now Medicare, they cover it, and then they tell the hospital, this is what we're going to pay. And it's far less than the hospital the doctor wants. Too bad. That's it. You talked about the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, the enrollments have gone up 80% under Joe Biden in not quite 3.5 years, 80%. 21 million people this last year enrolled in it. 21 million people. You want to know what Donald Trump said about it? Most recently, he tried to kill it when he was president. Remember that? And John McCain, thank God, it was by one vote, it wasn't killed. Recently, Donald Trump said, quote, Obamacare sucks, end quote. It's a crude statement. It demeans the whole process. But then he says, I will replace it with something so much better, so much better. He was president for 4 years. He didn't come up with anything at all that was better. And the truth of the matter is it's a scam. It's bait and switch. It's sort of like with Hitler in the Reichstag. He gets in as chancellor and he goes, listen, suspend yourselves. That's their Congress. Suspend yourselves for 4 years. I'll clean up the Versailles Treaty and all the stuff. Get rid of the Depression. and then we'll be golden, and then we'll put you back in. They said, okay, fine. The minute they did that, he started to kill them. So this clown goes, Obamacare sucks, Affordable Care Act sucks. Let me get rid of it, and I'll replace it with something so much better. He'll put a knife in your back. He's not going to do so much better. The other thing I want to say about that and about the age thing is Biden is 81. Trump will be 78 in July. Trump's wobbly mentally. He's scared to death of going to prison. He's savage, and he continues to insult and to attack and demean and lie. That's all he does. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about foreign policy unless you pay him. The Russians paid him quite a bit of money, and he'll sacrifice Ukraine. He sacrificed the Kurds to the Turks just to get back to the golf course. Then he lied when somebody objected and said, well, they didn't support us in the Second World War, and he was wrong about that. Kurds don't have a country. There's no country named Kurdistan. They'd like there to be, but they're wonderful fighters, and they all fought on our side against the Nazis. So he lied about that. He's going to betray Taiwan. He's already attacked Taiwan, saying, well, they compete with our chip makers. Are you kidding me? We're delighted that they make those chips. They trade with us. We trade with them. And they don't violate the sanctions against Communist China and against North Korea. But he did it because one Chinese bank that we know of paid him $5.8 million, and they just put services rendered. And he won't say what they were. And that's only one of the 500 pots of gold that have gone to him. And we did 4 of them under Pelosi, and the other 496 were shut down under Kevin McCarthy. Okay, coming into the show, stand by for another great show. Devil's Advocate with Dom and Crute. Great callers today, always great callers. And today was, I think, especially interesting and informative. Matt Flynn Direct will be back same time, same place tomorrow. And I'm signing off for today.
The order is rapidly fading, and